Please remember that the complete information for the class that you are about to view is at elithecomputerguy.com. Not only do we have our videos there, but we have part lists, diagrams, pictures, and even complete code examples. So if you are watching this video and you want more information, please go to elithecomputerguy.com. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and in today's class I'm going to be showing you how to use the command line utility dig both for security and for penetration testing scenarios. So the command line utility dig essentially gives you DNS information about whatever domain name you plug into it. So if you're interested about facebook.com or failnormal.com or whatever your particular domain name is, what you can do is you can simply plug in dig, whatever the domain name is, and then any or whatever particular record that you're looking for, and you will be able to pull up the DNS information for that domain name. So if you're looking for things such as MX records, so these are the mail exchange records, essentially how email is routed to that particular domain name, you could plug in dig, let's say facebook.com space MX, and then it will show you what the mail exchange records are. This can be very valuable for you as a systems administrator because frankly, most of the times when you're having problems connecting to your internet-based services, you're going to be having a DNS issue. So let's have a little bit of a scenario where every once in a while, all the emails for your company are not actually properly routed to your company. So maybe, let's say 1 hour every week or a couple of hours every month, all of a sudden, whoever sends emails to your company, those emails just simply disappear into the void. And you can't figure it out, right? The server works. The server works 99.98% of the time, right? It seems to work. So the server's working. Normal DNS is working. Everything seems to be working fine. But again, 1 or 2 hours a week or 1 or 2 hours a month, all the emails that get sent to your company simply disappear. And you're trying to figure out what the problem could be. Well, if you use dig, what you could do is you could do dig, whatever your domain name is, and what the MX records are, or MX. So that will pull up your MX records. And when you pull up your MX records, one of the things that you might find is that you have a mail server within your MX records from a previous infrastructure. So let's say before you were using a service such as GoDaddy or HostGator or something like that for your email services. And then you transitioned over to something like Google or maybe over into your own Exchange server. And so when you went through that process, you had to go through and you had to modify all of the MX records. Well, what if somebody fat-fingered it, or what if it was given to the intern or the assistant and they fixed almost all of the MX records, but they missed one, right? So with how MX records work, essentially when somebody sends an email, that email is supposed to go to the first server that it's told to go to, and then if it can't get to that server, it can't route to that server, it goes to the second server. If it can't go to that server, it goes to the third server, so on and so forth. So many times, especially if you're using Gmail for your business, you'll probably put in 5 or 6 different MX records. And again, so if the email can't go to the first server, it goes to second, third, fourth. Again, basically a failover process. Well, imagine this scenario. The first email server is correct, and so normally the emails go to that server. The second email server is correct, so even if the first email server fails, it goes to the second email server. But then what if the third server in those MX records is from your old Google account, or from your old GoDaddy account, or your old HostGator account? So basically, for some reason, the email can't route to the first 2 email servers it's supposed to go to. It basically ends up getting dumped into this old email infrastructure that you don't use anymore. So you never, and again, this is one of those things you think about like with definitions, you have never actually lost any emails. If you can figure out how to get back into that old email server account that you have with GoDaddy or HostGator, all of those emails have just been collecting there. But the problem is how your infrastructure is set up. Once those emails have collected there, there's been no way to get them back into the email boxes the way that they're supposed to be. So one of the things that you can use dig for, it can be very, very valuable is things such as basically the MX records. The other reason that dig may be very useful is in the modern world, many times websites will have multiple A records. So the A record is when somebody is trying to go to your website and basically resolving Salesforce.com, Facebook.com, EliTheComputerGuy.com to the IP address of your server. Well, for redundancy, for resiliency, you can actually now have multiple different A records. And so why that is so if one server fails, you can get routed to another server, possibly for load balancing purposes, possibly for geographic purposes, so on and so forth. So basically, one user in your company, when they go to Salesforce.com, they may go to one IP address. Another user going to Salesforce.com in the same company may get directed to a different IP address. It's very interesting. The Mac computer I have, when I ping Salesforce.com from my Mac, I literally get one IP address. And when I ping Salesforce.com from my Ubuntu server, I literally get a different IP address. Why this can be valuable from the troubleshooting standpoint is what happens if you're having issues routing to one of those IP addresses. So Salesforce, at least from here, when I do dig, I'm able to pull up 4 A records. So basically, depending on circumstances, if I go to the Salesforce.com website, I may be directed to any 4 of those IP addresses. Let's say if 3 of those IP addresses are working fine. No issue in the world with 3 IP addresses. But one IP address, for some reason, it's flaky, right? Who knows? Maybe the ISP is doing something stupid. Maybe Salesforce is doing something stupid. Maybe one of the interconnects is doing something stupid, but let's say just one of those IP addresses, you're having an issue. Well, this is where you can have intermittent problems in your company, right? So 1 out of every 4 users is having issues getting to Salesforce.com. And you're sitting there trying to figure it out because you're like, okay, Bob can get to Salesforce.com, and Sue can get to Salesforce.com, and Tim can get to Salesforce.com, but Fred, it keeps failing or it keeps acting very quirky. So you're like, well, Salesforce works, the computers work, Fred can get to other websites. What's the issue here? The issue may be, again, that one IP address. There's something weird going on with the routing, some kind of issue. And so that's what's causing that particular user an issue. And so being able to use dig, being able to pull up all of those A records and then try to verify what's going on, that may be useful for you. And again, from a troubleshooting standpoint, you may then go into the DNS, possibly the host file for that specific computer, and maybe hard code something in for a couple of days, or you may go into the DNS server for your company, and again, just hard code in something for a couple of days, and that may show you that, okay, what's happening is one IP address out of the 4 for Salesforce is giving you issues. From a penetration testing standpoint, one of the things that's useful for dig is that it does give you all the server information or the IP addresses for all the different servers that a company is using. So if you're looking to try to figure out where some weaknesses are, you can actually just grab the IP address for whatever service, basically the information for either the MX record or the information for the A record or something like that. You can actually plug that in to some kind of web utility, and it can give you information such as where that IP address is located. It can show you what company owns that IP address. So one of the things I'll show you is just screwing around. I'll show you Linus Media Group. If you go to linusmediagroup.com, you plug in for their A record. If you're able to grab the IP address for that A record, it'll show that they're using Squarespace. So from a penetration testing standpoint, that might be useful because you can then go, oh, okay, now I know this company is using these particular vendors in order to provide their services. And then you can go and think about social engineering or something like that. Pick up the phone and go, hey, yeah, this is Bob with Squarespace.com. We're having a problem with the servers today. I don't suppose you could give me your password. Right? Having that kind of information can be very valuable. So I'm going to be showing you how to use dig today. It's a relatively simple little command line tool to use. So with that, let's just jump in. So here we are at my little Linux server. This should work on your Linux machine. This should work on your Mac machine. This should work on your Windows machine. And it's basically just a very simple utility. All it is dig. So we're using the utility dig. Past that, what you're then going to do is what domain name you're interested in. So let's say facebook.com. And then past that, you're going to say what record you're looking for. Are you looking for the A record? Are you looking for the MX record? So on and so forth. We're just going to say we're looking for the A record, and then all we're going to do is hit enter, and this will give us the record. So we have facebook.com, it is the A record, and for facebook.com, we're getting this A record of 31.13.66.35. So basically that's showing us what IP address we're routing to when we go to www.facebook.com. If I wanted to do the same thing for, let's say, Salesforce, what I could do is I could do dig salesforce.com. Then I can say ask for the A record, and when I do that, this is what I'm telling you is for salesforce.com. You can actually see that there are multiple different A records here: 136.147.40.2, 57.1, 56.1, and 41.2. Again, the interesting thing about this is I was finding when I was playing around before I was doing this class is literally the server, when I ping salesforce.com from this particular machine, I get a different IP address than when I ping salesforce.com from the Mac that is literally sitting, half a foot away from this particular box. And so that's one of the reasons that you can have like weird intermittent issues, and why, let's say, only a quarter of the people in your company may have a problem getting to a website, or maybe even smaller than that. You may only have like 5% of the people in your company having an issue getting to a website, and the problem is there may be some kind of weird routing issue basically with the A records, right? So you can do that for this. Let's see here. Let's do clear again. Again, if you were looking for something like the MX records, the mail exchange records, we could do dig. Let's do facebook.com again, and then we can simply do MX, and this will give us what their MX record is. So this is the mail exchange record. So when you email to facebook.com, it will get routed to smtpnvvv.facebook.com. So you have this information. Why this, like the MX records especially, can be very, very important is you may have an error in your MX records. So let me clear the screen. So if we go to EliTheComputerGuy.com, so just to keep me in the mix, right? Eli, if I could spell, thecomputerguy.com, right? And then I do my MX records. Basically here, it will give you the information for my MX records. Again, I use Gmail for EliTheComputerGuy.com. And what you can see here is that I have multiple, so I actually have 5 MX records here. So first it gets routed to aspmx.l.google.com, then it goes to alt.1, aspx, then it goes to alt2, then it goes to aspmx, and so on and so forth. And basically this is how the email is routed. So when you send an email to me, it'll first try to go to this server. If this server is not available, it'll go to this server. If this server is not available, it'll go to this server, then to this server, and then to this server. So imagine here, again, imagine if this server is correct, imagine if this server is correct, but imagine, let's say I had GoDaddy in the past, and so I had left the GoDaddy configuration here. Basically what that means is if this server was unavailable and this server was unavailable, and this server was available, even though it's theoretically the wrong configuration, as long as it accepts the emails being sent to it, then the emails will just get dumped into that email box. And again, the emails have been sent, they have been collected, but if you no longer have GoDaddy or HostGator or whatever set up for your infrastructure, basically what's happening is all the emails are simply getting dumped into that account, and then you're going to be a little bit screwed, right? So this is why, again, dig can be very, very useful for you. Let's clear the screen again. Now, if you're looking for all of the records for a particular domain, one of the things you can try, and you do have to try, so you do dig, let's say facebook.com, and then you say any. So basically this is saying give me any of the public DNS records for facebook.com, and when I click on this, this will give us all the records then. So things such as the name servers. So the name servers for basically how the domain name gets resolved to the IP address. These are the name servers for facebook.com. Text files. So this might be very important for you for like security purposes. Like sometimes you have to add a text file to your DNS in order to have certain services function properly. So you may have thought that you added a text entry properly, but if you use dig and you pull it up and it's not actually there, you may have not saved it or something like that. So you can sit here and you can look at the text, right? So again, like Google site verification, it's almost quaint. It's actually almost quaint to know that Facebook has to verify their site just like the rest of us schlubs. So those are there for you. Then again, like I said, we can come down, we can look at the MX records, we can look at the A record, we can look at the quadruple A record. This is for the IPv6, and this is the certificate authority. So basically for SSL, for the encryption, this shows you who this certificate is coming from. So you have all of this different information that is sitting right in front of you. Again, if we clear the screen, oops, if we can actually spell, we can clear the screen again just to show you dig Eli the computer guy.com. This is all completely public. You can go and you can take a look at some of my information. So again, you can look at the name server information here. You can look at the MX information here. You can look at the A record here, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the things to realize though is sometimes you're not actually able to do an any request. This is kind of one of the weird things in the computer world where you can get all the information, you just can't get it using an any request, right? So let's say I do dig, and then I do Linus Media Group.com, and then I do any, right? So if I click on this, what we're going to get here is this thing that says RFC 8482. So we get some of this information, and most of this is pretty worthless to us. So basically what RFC 8482 says is you can put a configuration in your DNS, essentially not to not allow any to work, right? So if somebody requests all of your records, you simply will not be able to get the any option. But the weird part is you can't ask for specific things, right? So we go here and I simply say, hey, what's their mail exchange record? I can click on this and it will actually give me their mail exchange information. And this is kind of curious. Again, when we look at like troubleshooting things and where you may run into issues, the priorities for these two, this is 5 and this is 5 and this is 10 and this is 10. At least as I know from good administrative procedures, they're not supposed to be equal. You might have 10 and 11. You might have 4 and 5 or 5 and 6. Those aren't supposed to be equal. So again, if you're sitting there trying to figure out why maybe emails aren't routing properly, that might be an issue for you. Again, you could do, let's see if we do clear again. So I simply do clear. You go up and you can do Linus Media Group, you do the A record, and with the A record, again, you're seeing here with them, they actually have multiple A records. And so again, one of the interesting things you can do is if you want to know more information about how Linus Media Group is doing stuff, you could actually hit copy. We go over to Firefox, and there's this website called iplocation.net. It's basically just an IP lookup utility. You can paste this information in. You can do the look up the IP. So it'll give you some information. So it'll show you it's in the United States, it's in New York, a lot of things that don't really matter to me. But one of the curious things here is it actually shows you what the ISP is. So it's like, oh, okay, so they're using Squarespace for this particular website. And so that may or may not be valuable for you. Again, you can go and let's say, look at other people. So if we do, let's say, dig, was it rossmangroup.com. Again, we want to take a look at what his A record is. We can take a look at what his A record. Again, he has 3 different A records here. You can simply go to copy. You can go over to the IP location tool. You can simply paste this in. We can do IP lookup, and then we can see what he's dealing with. And so this company, so Rossman Group, Lewis, he's using Cloudflare. So Cloudflare is in front of his actual web servers, and so that's how his infrastructure is operating. And so this is how dig can be very useful, again, to going in and doing your own troubleshooting, figure out where problems can be, and also from that whole penetration concept of, oh, okay, so this person's using Cloudflare, this person is using Squarespace, so on and so forth. If you know a particular vulnerability for those platforms, that might be useful for you. The final thing that I'm going to show you is that you can actually specify an IP address if you're going to be looking for information. So let's say, let's see if this still works. So if I do dig and salesforce.com, and then I do any for these guys. Here's one of the curious things that happened, right? So we don't get that RFC. We do not get the RFC issue here, but we just don't get any information, right? Well, wait a minute, this is salesforce.com. Why am I not getting a lot of information? How Dig works is Dig first tries to resolve to get the information from the local computer. So if for some reason the local computer is not able to resolve the domain name properly, basically this is what you get. And obviously this is incorrect, right? Obviously Salesforce.com has more than this. So what you can actually do is you can specify a specific DNS server that you want to use in order to get this information. So I'm going to use Google's DNS server, so I can do any. And then what we do is @ so we use the @ to say what DNS server we're using. So 8.8.8.8. So this just happens to be the main DNS server for Google. And so when we try to resolve the DNS information for Salesforce.com from 8.8.8.8, what we can see is now we just get a whole butt ton of information, right? So we get these RRSIG records here. We get all of their name server records here. We get their mail exchange records here. We get a whole bunch of text information, text records here. Again, I just love the fact that even Salesforce.com has to Google site verify. We get all their A records here. So basically we can now see all of this information. Again, this might be useful for you for using different DNS servers. So again, if you're having weird, quirky problems with your internet services, it may be something like the DNS isn't propagating properly. So one of the things is, like, if you have a DNS server in your infrastructure, you might want to use a dig using the IP address for that DNS server to see what that DNS server is actually able to present to you. Like, so for some reason, maybe it's not updating the DNS information as quickly as it should. So when you use 8.8.8.8, you may be getting up-to-date DNS information, but for whatever reason, your local DNS server, it's not updating, so you get incorrect DNS information from your local server. So that's one of the things you can do with dig. So basically, this is dig. This is how you use it. It's a very, very simple tool. Essentially, all you do is you simply do dig, then you do, again, failnormal.com. So basically whatever domain name you're interested in, then you say what record. Do you want the A record? Do you want an A record? Do you want an MX record? Do you want the quadruple A? Do you want the IPv6 record there? Do you want text records for some reason? Again, to verify something like that Google site verification, you can simply plug that in there. And then past that, if you want to be able to ping or basically be able to resolve from a specific DNS server, you can then simply plug in that specific DNS server. And then when you do that, you'll then get all of the information. Again, name server, MX record for fail normal, text records, A records, so on and so forth. So this can be very valuable for you. And also do realize this is all 100% public. This is all 100% public. If Facebook or Lewis or Linus have a quibble about this particular video, this is 100% public. And so again, also from a security standpoint, just realize all of this is out there, so you want to be careful about things like these text records. Again, imagine you have some stupid intern, you tell them to plug something in as a text record in your DNS, and then they just plug in, who knows, usernames, passwords, who knows what they plug into a text record. Just realize all of this is 100% public out there for people to see. So just realize that from a security standpoint. So there you go. Now you know how to use a command line utility dig, both for security purposes and for penetration testing purposes. This is an easy way to get a lay of the land for what the internet-facing infrastructure for an organization looks like. And again, for you from a troubleshooting standpoint, this may be very valuable. Again, the MX record thing, that MX record thing has been a valuable tool for me in the past. So things like that may be very useful. Understanding A records and any issues you may be having with the A records, that can be very useful. And then again, from that whole penetration testing standpoint, the whole ability to go and start to understand how that infrastructure looks like, what vendors people are using, where the location of particular servers are, that type of thing might be useful for you. So do realize, though, this is 100% public information. To be clear, I showed you public information that anybody can get to. Just CYA on that one. So it can be a very useful thing for any number of reasons. And also, again, do realize for things like the text records and all that people can just pull up your information, see those text records, and if you put something into a text record that shouldn't be there, and again, sometimes when you're setting up DNS, like many times people set up the DNS when they're first starting a company, like maybe when they're really new in technology and they're first setting up a company, and so they plug in some information into those text records that should not be in the text records. Like again, it's just a text record, right? You could put in IP addresses, you could put usernames, you could put passwords, you could put a lot of stupid crap into a text record, right? And so again, if you're young, you're not really sure what you're doing, you plug in information to a text record that should not be there. It might be 2 or 3 years later, you've completely forgotten about setting up your DNS services. And again, somebody's just curious. They plug in dig, they plug in your domain name. They just want to see what information pops up. And oh, hey, look, there's their Active Directory server, and there's the username, and there's the password. Copy, paste, attack, right? So again, some of that stuff that you really do need to be thinking about. So as always, I enjoy doing this class. Look forward to seeing you at the next one. If you like the content that I create, please think about going to eliTheComputerGuy.com and becoming a member or donating. Please understand that all of the educational videos are in front of the paywall. That includes the videos, that includes the notes, the diagrams, and the code example. All of that is freely available and in front of the paywall. But if you want to watch opinion videos or if you want to be able to comment, you do need to become a member. Membership is $5 a month or $60 a year and gives you access to those opinion videos and the ability to comment. If you don't want to become a member, you just want to give a one-time donation, there's also a donate button where you can do that. Please understand, in order to provide the education that I am, it does cost money. Servers cost money, equipment costs money, travel costs money. All of these things cost a reasonable amount of money, and the fact of the matter is YouTube's advertising program no longer supports creators the way that it used to. So if you want these classes to continue to stick around and you find them to be valuable, please think about either becoming a monthly member or donating a few dollars for this project.